Step 1 done, a plan to rein in the NDIS. Step 2 looms, winding back property tax breaks. The government is spending some political capital, but will the opposition cooperate or will it dig in and fight? Angus Taylor joins us shortly. Plus, why the government won't introduce a new gas tax and ISIS families on the move again. I'm David Speers. Welcome to Insiders. It's rare for governments to take on reforms that leave some worse off, but with the NDIS bill still surging, Labor has gone for a major reset. 300,000 people with a disability will either be turned away or booted off the scheme by the end of the decade. Exactly who will go is yet to be worked out, so too what alternative supports will be available. For many families, it is a frightening uncertainty, but the government argues this is essential and concedes the original design was flawed. This is about restoring confidence in the scheme and in Labor's ability to manage the budget.
Right now, the NDIS costs too much and it's growing too fast.
160,000 participants will be cut from the program.
Tougher eligibility requirements for new entrants and
every participant to be reassessed from 2028.
And unless we take action to make it sustainable, it simply will not be there.
It's straight up mean.
Minister Butler dropped a complete bombshell.
We agree and we hear about the NDIS and we want to work with the Minister.
If the disability community is not at the table, then it's not real reform.
More mandatory registration of service providers
and all payments digital to help fight fraud.
Not for it to be an ATM, for shonks and grifters, fraudsters and crooks.
Aims to slash annual growth from the current 10% to 2% over the forwards.
Instead of costing more than $70 billion in 2030, taxpayers will spend around $55 billion.
That's below where inflation is. Isn't this a cut in real terms?
That's as we reset it to its original intent.
There's a lot of unknown. There was a lot of talk around percentages and dollars, but there wasn't a lot of detail around the what next.
We have to ask the value for money question.
We've got to get it to work, not just for the Australians, importantly, who need these services, but also get it right for the taxpayer.
We cannot see this scheme continue on its current path. Its community support, its social licence is slipping away.
Many of the cuts will leave states and territories picking up the bill.
Where are they going to go when there are not things set up yet?
We've got to be honest with people. We can't provide NDIS-like services at the state level.
The federal government will walk away from their responsibility for people living with a disability.
We don't support a unilateral decision-making process.
The federal government can't just shift this problem to the states.
Governments just have to get on with this.
We've got the state government saying it's too expensive, the Commonwealth saying it's too expensive. Caught in the middle are disabled people.
There's a strong sense among disabled people they are being used as political footballs.
We're not going to change eligibility and move people off the scheme before we're confident and we know the community is confident there are other systems of support in place.
We won't move to moving them off until that's guaranteed.
Every single Australian should get the care that they need. But what we shouldn't have is a system that is growing exponentially.
Thanks very much.
Well, we're joined this week by journalist and author Lenore Taylor, the ABC's economics writer Tom Crowley and Katina Curtis from the West Australian. Very good morning to all of you. I want to just start with some thoughts on what we've seen happen on the NDIS. Lenore, you remember when this was set up, there was great pride, particularly from Labor, around this whole scheme and the transformative nature of it. Where did it go wrong?
I think there was great pride and I think it was really popular with Australians, the idea of looking after the most vulnerable, the idea that help would be there if you or your family needed it. I think what the government has admitted this week is that the constant growth of the cost of it above the projections isn't just because of fraudsters and things that people have talked about in the past, but because of design flaws from the get-go. And this time, I mean, because people have tried to change it before. The former government tried to change it. This government tried in 2024. But now they're really biting the bullet. and making big changes. And I think the great political risk now is they've announced the savings, they've announced how many people are likely to no longer get it, but the detail remains unknown. And I think that leads to a lot of very understandable anxiety among Australians living with a disability, because these are life-changing decisions in their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. That growth that Lenore talks about, Tom, well above projections, we hear all sorts of figures. What does that look like, that scale of growth?
Well, I think we've got a graph of exactly what it looks like, David, and that is just I guess, a comparison that we've done between the 2015 projections that were in the budget and the intergenerational report versus 2022. And I mean, the picture speaks for itself. You know, these are projections, they bounce around a lot, but really it's just a visualisation of what a growth rate of 10 to 15% in that order would look like. And I can't think of any other government program that has gone that way, and certainly at that pace. That's over the course of 7 years. And I think it tells a couple of stories. It tells part of the story of clearly why the Labor cabinet now has decided that they needed to do something, but it also shows what happens when you have several years of indecision and when governments were both slow to, I think, answer the really difficult questions early on about how you would guarantee that the intent of the scheme was actually met. And when you don't answer in 2015 or 2013, the hard questions about who should get support and who should not, then you end up in this position where now, to course correct, as Mark Butler would put it, you're then looking at taking 300,000 people off who either have support or would expect to get support in the next couple of years, and then actively take something away from them, and that's a much uglier decision.
And one of the biggest cuts I can remember to a government program. I mean, it's really significant.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and I mean, in general, governments have been good at both on the revenue side and the spending side. I think it's worth saying at the give bit and not so much the take bit. And so it's really difficult, right? And we talk about hard choices in the budget. We've had a 30-year period where, pretty much this almost law of entropy. Every single major budget decision worsens the bottom line on the spending side and the tax side. This is what it looks like if you try to buck that trend. There are so many questions about exactly how you do this. There's the risk that this sort of ambitious constraint target doesn't get met, and there's the risk that it gets met capriciously if the systems aren't put in place carefully. I mean, we could have the same thing again where the policy intent doesn't happen.
Or the risk the states don't play ball, or the risk that the algorithm doesn't work.
There's a lot of things that have to go right here. And I guess the other thing is, yes, it's a budget problem and it's big numbers, but it's a lot of actual real people as well, and their families and the people around them who are at play here too.
Well, here's the thing, Katina. Is it fair enough for the government to bank in the budget that we'll see in a couple of weeks this huge saving when it hasn't yet worked out a lot of the detail around who's on, who's off, what those eligibility rules look like, what the state's supports are going to look like? Is it fair to put that saving in the budget already?
They're going to do it anyway. Every government does. We think about, the classic is Back in Black, Josh Frydenberg, and then COVID hit and it all vanished, right?
Oops.
But look, I think, it's a hell of a lot of work here for Mark Butler, particularly when the states are already going, whoa, hang on a minute, you're putting all this cost back on us. I mean, that's completely ignoring the fact that part of the reason why we're here, part of the reason why so many people have needed to or felt they needed to go on to the NDIS was because the states went, whoopee, the federal government's going to take care of this, and shifted all of their made all their savings, cut all those programs 13 years ago that they were doing, and now the federal government's saying,
but if they get this wrong, it's going to lead to cost shifting into aged care and
hospitals.
into hospitals and other places as well. There's so many ways it could go wrong.
I think it's deliberate, though. I mean, I think that the view of how quickly the shortened projections of getting it to 8% seem to have failed, I think that persuaded Mark Butler that you had to start with the really big, bold target and then say, let's sit down and let's work it out.
The fact that you've had this huge blowout, just since December, of another 13 billion over the next 4 years, I mean, and that seems to have been fairly persuasive in saying, well, the things that we were trying to do just haven't worked.
They're just not working. Yeah. We are going to come back to what this means for participants and their families as well when it comes to these changes and this uncertainty they're facing. Time, though, to talk to the opposition leader, Angus Taylor, who is facing his first big test with a by-election in Susan Lee's old seat of Farrer. With just under 2 weeks to go in the race and early voting about to begin, the latest poll from UComs shows One Nation's David Farley and independent Michelle Millthorpe are basically neck and neck on 31% and 30% respectively. The Liberal candidate well back on 16% and the Nationals on just 7%. After preferences, this poll shows One Nation is on track to win the seat, which has been held by the Nationals and Liberals since its creation in 1949. Angus Taylor, welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, David.
So, when you replaced Susan Lee, you said it was a change or die moment for the Liberal Party. When you look at those sort of figures, is that change or is that die?
Well, David, I knew that there was always going to be a big mountain to climb in Farah and more generally. Clearly, we had breached trust with the Australian people and our supporters with 2 coalition breakups in less than a year. You can breach trust quickly and it takes time to rebuild, and we know that, but we are rebuilding, and our focus on getting immigration policy, the integrity of our immigration system right in this country, making sure we have affordable, abundant energy in our country, making sure that we've got an economy that works for Australians, is going to restore Australian standard of living as we protect our way of life. These are the priorities. I recognise it'll take time for people to come back, but we are going to keep working, as we're seeing Raisa and Brad do in Farah right now, to get back to where we need to be to win an election, and most importantly, to get rid of a rotten Labor government.
It does look like One Nation will win this by-election with the help of preferences from the Liberal Party. Why is the Liberal Party preferencing One Nation?
Well, can I say we want first preferences, and we are preferencing the National Party second, and that's as it should be.
But One Nation
can I say this is a very important point. We have re-established the coalition, a strong coalition, since Matt and I have been in the job, and we know that is absolutely crucial to regain the trust of people in Farah and right across Australia, and that is a very important decision we have made to preference each other. Look, at the end of the day, we want first preferences. When we look at the other parties, the truth is that the Teals have consistently, in the Parliament, the vast majority of the time, voted with the Greens. And in a place like Farah, that's going to be bad for the economy, it's going to be bad for agriculture and agricultural communities and access to water, it's going to be bad for fuel and energy security and abundance, and we need all of those things in Farah if we're going to have a successful region.
OK, but I should point out Michelle Milford says she's not a Teal, she's wants to stop the water buybacks and so on. So you think preferencing One Nation, and given this would be a watershed moment if they were to win for the first time a lower house seat from the Liberals, you think preferencing One Nation ahead of the Independent is a good idea?
Well, as I said, we've got a Teal, a group of Teals in this Parliament that are trashing our energy system, are ready and have been trashing access to water and the strength of our agricultural communities, and we simply cannot endorse that. They vote with the Greens the majority of the time.
So the One Nation is superior to that.
This is the incredibly important point. If you vote Teal, you get Green. If you vote Teal, you get Green. And so, whilst preferences beyond preferencing the National Party are picking the least worst option, and we want people to vote for the Liberal Party and the National Party. The truth is that we don't want to see Teal policies for Farah or for this country.
Do you want to see One Nation policies? Because if you vote One Nation...
We want to see coalition policies.
I understand that, but to your point, if you vote Teal, you get Green. If you vote One Nation, what do you get?
Well, as I say, these are you choose the least worst option when you get to preferencing, and the least worst option of all is the National Party for the Liberal Party's point of view, and we want to see a coalition in government again. Look, ultimately, the only way we're going to get rid of this rotten Labor government that is trashing our economy, trashing our budget, trashing our energy system, trashing agriculture in this country, is to get a coalition government into place, and that means voting for the Liberal and National Party. So that's what we're fighting.
You don't think One Nation poses an existential threat to regional seats for the coalition, though?
Well, I think Teal policies, Labor policies, are absolutely existential for the regions, and we're seeing the Labor government right now. If you get out into these regions, you see what it's doing to them. I mean, right now, people are scared about getting access to the diesel they need to plant their crops, to run the trucks that are so crucial for those regional areas. I mean, we are seeing the impact of this, and this is why, in the end, we need a coalition government to get rid of a bad Labor government.
So Pauline Hanson is actually going to be here in Canberra today. She's addressing a rally calling for an end to mass migration. Do you agree with Pauline Hanson on migration?
Well, there's some things we might agree on. I'm sure there's things we don't agree on.
Migration?
But I'll tell you what, tell you where I start on this. is migration numbers in this country have been too high and standards have been too low, David. And the integrity of the system has not been what it needs to be. The numbers have been absolutely unprecedented. Over 500,000, almost 540,000 in a single year.
It's come down since then.
But let's be clear, it's still way above Labor's own targets.
So has Pauline Hanson got it right?
Well, can I just get to what is wrong, and then we can talk about what is right. Just on the current run rate, we're running at about 80,000 a year above Labor's own targets. Every budget has been wrong. So what do we need? We need lower numbers and we need higher standards. And that's why we've announced our Australian Values First immigration policy that will put Australian values, our Australian Values Statement, at the heart of our immigration legislation, our immigration policy, putting up the red light to radicals, and at the same time shutting the door to people abusing the system.
In that migration policy, when you delivered the speech announcing all of this, there was a line that really jumped out. You said that those who migrate from liberal democracies have a greater likelihood of subscribing to Australian values. There are a lot of migrants who come from countries that aren't liberal democracies who might disagree with you. Are migrants from China, from Vietnam, less likely to fit in than British migrants? Is that what you're saying?
No, David, many good people come from bad countries. Let's be clear. Some of the great Australians have come from countries that were bad countries at the time. But there is a higher risk that some bad people come from those bad countries.
You're saying that...
And so what we have to do is we have to screen not based on country of origin, not based on religion, not based on race, but based on values.
So which of the bad countries? Are you saying China is a bad country, or?
Well, look, we've seen bad countries around the world. I mean, to claim that Iran is a good country right now, seriously, and the government itself has put legislation in place to make it harder for people to come from Iran. We have seen terrible acts of atrocity coming from Gaza. I mean, we know there in the Middle East and elsewhere there are countries that have committed great atrocities on their own populations. And so there is real risk with people coming from those countries. It's also true that many great Australians have come from bad countries. And this is why the discrimination shouldn't be based on race or religion. It must be based on Australian values.
You're suggesting it's based also on bad countries, is this language you're using now. Just back to the question, are you saying China...
Are you saying Iran is a good country?
No, I'm asking, is China a bad country? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not saying that, but are you saying Iran is a good country, David? Let's be clear. We need to discriminate right now based on people who accept our core values. Now, they're in our value statement now. They're in our citizenship ceremonies now.
So Iran's a bad country. What are the other bad countries you're talking about? Should people be worried if they've come from a certain country that's not a liberal democracy?
No, we should be focused on people who accept Australian values, and it should be intelligence-driven and risk-based. Right. So if we've got a part of the world where we know the risks are higher, then the screens should appropriately take account of that. Now,
so it doesn't matter what the country is.
It needs to be intelligence-based, but this is based on the individual, David. Not on the country.
Okay.
It's based on the individual, and this is the crucial point. We are not proposing discrimination based on race or religion. We are proposing discrimination based on acceptance
so it doesn't
of
matter
parliamentary
if it's a good
democracy,
or a bad
the rule of law, our system of law, our basic freedoms. If someone wants to come here and overturn our democracy or doesn't believe in our system of law, I think most Australians would agree with me, they shouldn't be coming to the country. And if they get here, their visas should be cancelled.
OK. Just coming back to the question on migration, though, about Pauline Hanson. Has she got it right or wrong?
Well, I don't really understand what her policies are because they change from day to day, David.
You're reluctant to call her out on
Well, I mean, give me a specific policy and I can talk about it. But
well, she says she wants to end mass migration. She says she wants 130,000 cap. Is that right?
Well, can I say migration numbers have been too high. They've been higher than Labor's own targets by a long way.
Is 130,000 about right?
People. Well, 1.4 million people in 3.5 years. Is that too high? Absolutely it is. It's too high on Labor's own numbers. We have to get back to a sustainable level. It has to be in line with the housing infrastructure and services we have in this country. And so the numbers are too high, just as the standards have been too low.
The ABC's revealed a group of Australian women and children connected to ISIS fighters have now left the Al-Roj camp in Syria. They are set to be deported this time, according to Syrian authorities. They're trying to return to Australia, of course. Got some pictures of them here. What would you do to stop these Australian citizens returning to Australia?
Well, can I say, David, these are people who have left this country to be part of the Islamic State caliphate. That Islamic State, ISIS, is a terrorist organisation. It is a terrorist act to support them, a terrorist offence to support them. Frankly, we have to put Australian interests and Australian security first. And that means the government should be doing everything it possibly can to not accept these people back into the country. Now, it's clear that they have been providing assistance, whether it's through issuing and distributing passports, whether it's doing DNA tests, whether indeed it is supporting third parties to do the repatriation. We put a bill to the Parliament which would prevent that from happening, and the government rejected that bill. So there is much they can do, and we've put forward very practical, sensible things that can be done, including that bill to the Parliament.
So you don't think
that's been rejected by the government?
They shouldn't have been issued passports?
Well, I'm saying that the government should be making every possible effort to not accept these people back into the country. That includes both the issuing and distribution of passports where that's possible. There's obviously...
Is there a requirement to issue a passport to a citizen?
There's actually also a lot of discretion, or some discretion, with the minister, as there is with temporary exclusion orders. Only one temporary exclusion order has been issued. We don't know how recently security assessments have been done on these people. We know that there is a third party, a close colleague of Tony Burke, who is working hard to assist the repatriation of these people right now, and a bill went before the Parliament
to be clear,
to prevent that from happening.
OK, you're talking about Jamal Reef. He's not getting help from Tony Burke on this.
David, can I just pick you up on this?
Sure.
Because this is an important point. We put a bill to the Parliament that would have prevented that from happening. Labor rejected that bill.
OK.
They rejected it outright. So they had the choice on this. They are supporting this activity of third parties to assist repatriation of these people.
ASIO says that it has assessed all of the adults in that, Australian adults in that camp. One of them, as you say, has been issued a temporary exclusion order. Are you saying that ASIO's taken its eye off the ball and can't manage this?
Well, all I am saying is that we need to know more about when the last security assessments were done, what we know from that, and why only one temporary exclusion order has been issued. And frankly, I think there's very serious questions around...
You don't think ASIO's on this?
Well, I don't think the government is on it. I don't think the government is on it.
We have security agencies to do this
as
task.
I said, we gave the government a choice on this issue of third-party assistance.
Do you trust ASIO on this?
I don't trust the government.
Do you trust ASIO on this?
I don't trust the government.
Do you trust ASIO?
In the end, it's the government that makes these decisions, and they are making decisions. And they had a decision in front of the Parliament where they rejected our legislation.
Let's turn to the oil crisis. The government has now underwritten 8 shipments of oil to come to Australia. It says we now have more supply in Australia than we did before this war began. Do you give them any credit for that?
Well, I hope we do have enough supply to get through it. We certainly would have been in a much more difficult situation without the refinery margin guarantee, without the minimum stockholding obligation that I put in place when I was minister. Reasonable questions about whether that's going far enough.
Is it? Do we need more?
Well, you know, I want to see energy abundance. I want to see fuel abundance in this country. And I do think that means we have to identify and produce more oil and gas in this country. It does mean we want to have the stocks at a level that ensure we can get through weather a crisis.
So
now, the best stocks of all,
a bigger stockpile than we
can have. The best stock of all is fuel under the ground that we can produce. That's not 30 days, that can be 30 years. That's the best stock of all, and that's why getting access to upstream oil and gas, when the government has put legislation through the Parliament that explicitly discriminates against oil and gas production in this country, makes it harder. Well, we want that changed.
As you know, the criticism is that it's too expensive to actually extract that oil and turn it into fuel. Here it's light crude, that you'd need to still import heavy crude. Would you need a big taxpayer subsidy to make that stack up?
Can I say, the starting point here, David, is just to not make it hard. to not make it more expensive. I mean, the government has put a tax on refineries through the safeguard mechanism. That's what they've done. It's a carbon tax on industry through the safeguard mechanism. The government has made it harder to get approvals for upstream oil and gas. The government trashed the storage investments that we were making in fuel security in this country.
Of course, it points out that you wanted to keep the storage in Texas, but anyway, bottom line, this is
that's nonsense. But anyway, go on.
Well, you did keep the
well, and we sold it to bring it back to Australia because there wasn't enough storage. Okay. Meanwhile, we put a storage program in place, and the government trashed it because at the end of the day, they have never been focused on fuel security. Chris Bowen has never been focused on fuel security until he discovered that there was a fuel crisis weeks after the fuel crisis started.
Bottom line, this whole crisis has been created by the war in Iran. Your colleague Andrew Hastie called it a huge miscalculation. Do you agree Donald Trump's made a big mistake here?
Well, I'm not going to get into commentary on, major leaders like Donald Trump.
You're not willing to call out Donald Trump?
What I will say is what we want to see, David, is an opening of the Strait of Hormuz.
Is this war a mistake? Are you willing to say the war's a mistake?
Well, I'm not going to get into commentary on this. What I do know is Iran is a bad country. It is. It kills its own people, David. That is a bad country.
Sure.
And I think it is reasonable for freedom-loving countries like ours to call out the bad behaviour of those countries. But I tell you what I want to see most of all, an opening up of the Strait of Hormuz. Because if we don't get that, we are going to continue to see high petrol prices and diesel prices at the Bowser, high jet fuel costs for when you fly around this country, and we need that brought down.
We are a couple of weeks out from the budget. Looks like the government will wind back some of the tax breaks for property investors. There are mixed views, it seems, amongst Liberals on this as well. Again, Andrew Hastie on this program was open to it. Are you?
Well, what I want to see is more homes built in this country, more investment, successful housing completions in this country. And those numbers, again, Labor has absolutely failed. About 70,000 less than their own targets. Their 1.2 million house target, they're not even going to get close, David. No one thinks they're even going to get close. If you've got immigration that's 80,000 a year above its target and housing 70,000 a year below the target,
okay, but on these taxes,
well, this is crucial. You're going to have a housing crisis, and we do. And young Australians are saying, I can't buy a home.
So would you vote against any change to negative gearing and capital gains tax?
What I am saying is if you want more houses, don't impose additional taxes on houses. If you want more of something, you don't.
What if
need
you
an
want
extra
fewer
tax.
investors? What if we don't want more investors? What if we want more owner-occupiers?
I just want more houses built. That's the starting point, because young Australians, whether it's trying to rent a home or buy a home, it is a battle.
And so I'm still unclear. Would you vote against any change to these taxes?
Well, at the moment, we've got about a thought bubble a day about what they're going to be, David. So I'm not going to speculate on specifics.
So you're keeping an open mind on this?
No, I am saying I want more houses.
Understand
the test here,
but you're not saying whether you would vote against changes to negative gearing and capital gains
David,
tax.
you get the government to give a specific policy which lasts more than about 24 hours, and I'll consider comment. Right. But the principle is the crucial point here. The principle is we need more homes built, and if you want more homes built, don't whack another tax on it. Okay. If you want less of something, tax it. If you want more of something, take taxes off. Government, they talk about reform. We need a restoration of standard of living in this country. Every measure in the budget should be measured against, is it going to improve our standard of living? Is it going to improve productivity and competitiveness in this country? And I tell you what, raising taxes on homes doesn't strike me as the way to get more homes built.
Just a final question. Those Anzac Day dawn services yesterday, there was some booing of the Welcome to Country ceremony. Peter Dutton, a year ago when this happened, said it was a disgrace. But then a few days later, he argued that Welcome to Country ceremonies shouldn't happen on Anzac Day. Where do you stand?
Well, can I say that booing, whatever the cause, on Anzac Day and Anzac Day ceremonies is absolutely inappropriate and un-Australian. And it shouldn't happen. It simply shouldn't happen. I can understand the frustration Australians feel about overuse of welcomes to country. I feel that at times. Often, actually. I think it is overused, And as a result, I think they are devalued by overuse. I would like to see them used less and therefore not devalued as I think they have been over time. It's up to individual organising committees to decide whether they want to do it or not, but the general principle should be let's do this less and make it more special when it happens.
And don't boo.
Well, absolutely not boo. Absolutely not.
Angus Taylor, thank you for joining us this morning.
Good to be with you, David.
All right, well, coming up from social media to the Senate, how grassroots calls for a new gas tax are closing in on the political establishment. First, let's get back to our panel. We're joined once more by journalist and author Lenore Taylor, the ABC's Tom Crowley, and Katina Curtis from the West Australian. So just to come back to the by-election, which is now just under 2 weeks away, Lenore, this debate that's gone on, well, for years, for decades, in the Liberal Party about whether to preference One Nation or not. I mean, Angus Taylor's right. They're preferencing their partners, the Nationals, first. But when it comes to those two lead
it's candidates... not really the point, right?
Yeah, it's One Nation ahead of the independent Michelle Milthorpe. Can you understand why they're opting for One Nation?
No, in a word, no, I can't. I mean, this is a highly unusual by-election because a major party is not in contention. It's One Nation v the Independent, who, by the way, isn't a teal. It's more a voices of kind of campaigner. But I really don't understand the logic of the coalition preferencing One Nation, which may well see the One Nation candidate elected. As you said, the first elected One Nation lower house member since Pauline Hanson joining Barnaby Joyce there. That would increase the momentum that One Nation is getting nationally. Really what Angus Taylor was saying there is that he kind of prefers One Nation's policies to Teal's policies, whether or not we accept that Michelle Milthorpe is a Teal. How that is going to translate into him winning enough seats nationally to win a federal election really does escape me. And I saw this week also that the coalition has got a whole online advertising attack campaign against One Nation, saying they have no solutions. Well, if they've got no solutions, why are you preferencing them? It is quite a mystery to me.
I thought it was interesting him saying that, you know, his attack line is vote independent, get Greens. I mean, you can just as easily see Labor saying for the next 2 years, vote Liberal, get One Nation. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think the answers on migration there just sort of show the interesting. I mean, there's so clearly there a strategy of we'll come back to the Teal seats and try and win them again maybe in 3 years or 6 years or whatever, but for now it's all about those One Nation swing voters. And the problem is, you know, Angus Taylor spends 5 minutes there with you talking about bad countries, and then he says, oh, but it's actually, our policy's not about countries. And the odd thing is that is actually true, that the coalition migration policy, because the shadow cabinet has sat down and made this something that could perhaps survive a court challenge, you know, go through the process of the character test, etc. It's actually, apart from maybe Home Affairs using some sort of risk-based weighting per country, it actually is sort of an individual case-by-case thing. But you have Pauline Hanson saying, well, they're bad countries and let's ban them entirely.
Because you can't out One Nation.
You're just buying into her talking points and that gives her the win, and it's...
And shifts the debate in that direction and legitimises those kinds of views. I just find it unfathomable.
And I think the only hope that the coalition has there is that the people who were coalition voters and are now One Nation voters will care about that distinction of a policy that can be implemented, and someone that behaves like an alternative Prime Minister won't bite on Donald Trump, someone who's trying to say, look, I'm still within the establishment field of someone who could govern, but I say the same sorts of things as Pauline.
I think that's exactly it. I think that it's trying to win back those who've drifted across to One Nation as you get closer to an election, a by-election in this case, by saying that, but presenting as still a sensible government in a time of global crisis that, you know, isn't going to do crazy.
But this is the time when the electorate's making up their minds about Angus Taylor as a leader. Does he think they'll forget?
And just, it struck me that there's a reluctance to go after Pauline Hanson, where the likes of Matt Canavan has been far more willing and others. Angus Taylor doesn't want to bite.
Yeah, I think Matt Canavan, as you say, he's actively been... He mentions One Nation and Pauline Hanson, you know, actually quite often just brings them up in interviews and then, you know, lays out a fairly serious case for why they're not the answer. I do think he has, you know, the Nationals have got that perception. They do think they are clawing back some of that vote. I mean, we saw that UCom's poll was only, about 7%, but they thought that they were much lower than that to start with. So that approach does seem to be working, but I think that, I mean, it's the old, like, why would you... Pauline Hanson said it herself, like, why would you vote for One Nation Light when you can just vote for me?
Yeah.
And at the same time, Angus Taylor's turning off the sort of city-based vote. The people have peeled off to the Teals.
Just one more on this. If it's just one seat, One Nation is to win it, as the polls suggest they may well do, does it really matter? Lenore, why is this important, coming back to that point about the first seat they win in the lower house and let's not forget, a jewel in the crown. The Liberal Party...
Tim Fisher's seat.
Was, and the Liberal Party itself had its creation moment in Albury.
So I mean, that's the thing that I find really flummoxing, is that this would be such a symbolic success for One Nation, and it would give them more momentum. Now, I personally think we should be looking a lot more at their policies, and rather than just talking about the momentum all the time, because that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it would be an absolute coup for One Nation, and if it happens, it would be because of the coalition.
We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks' time. Look, just back on the NDIS, as I mentioned earlier, the big question I think a lot of families are facing is, will we be on or off the scheme? What are these eligibility rules going to look like? Katina, what do we know at this point about where that line's going to be drawn?
Yes, I mean, there was a huge amount in Mark Butler's speech the other day. I went back afterwards and I reckon there was 19 announcements in 28 minutes, which is just like a phenomenal amount of information. Yeah. The PM's speech a couple of weeks ago, on a sort of generous count of what's an announcement, there was probably 5. So it seems like, you know, they're making this big shift from having a sort of set list, you know, if you get this diagnosis against your name, then you're more or less automatically in, shifting that around to being, well, how does your disability, your condition affect how you can function in everyday life? There has been work on a sort of tool, I understand it's called the ICANN tool, and it is actually going to start to be used when there's this new framework comes in, which was going to be July. One of those 19 announcements was that's pushed back till early next year. And that is based on a UN tool as well. So the people who are involved in setting the scheme up originally say this was always the plan. It shouldn't have taken 13 years to come in. But so it's going to be more about what participants can actually do and what level of supports they need to be able to live a full life. Yeah.
Look, until that happens, you know, there is going to be anxiety, and when it does happen, there are going to be stories that emerge. So what are the political risks here, Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where, and this is one of those things that the onus, I think, is on us as the media and politicians in general, to not just be interested in the headline announcement, but to follow this through over the next couple of years, because so much of this process of figuring out what the functional assessment will look like remains uncertain. I think so far this week, the one thing that the discussion has gone to has been people with a level 2 autism diagnosis, that a lot of the people in the disability community say that they expect. When you talk about these functional assessments, they're the people who you know, might come up as mild to moderate functional impairment on those sorts of tests and therefore be taken off the scheme. I mean, it doesn't matter which group of people you're talking about. This is the difficult thing, where we're not necessarily in the excuse me, the government's not talking about people who don't deserve help. They're trying to make a distinction of the number of people who can affordably be helped by a scheme. And so when you are playing catch up so late, you just inevitably, whoever, you know, the people who don't pass this functional assessment will have been experiencing help, will have been helped immensely by it, and will suffer from the withdrawal of it. And there's no way around that, no matter how well.
And will be possibly picked up by these non-NDIS programs, the Thriving Kids, and then another one for, you know, non-children.
Don't exist yet.
That don't exist yet. That relies on cooperation with the state. So, you know, you can understand the nervousness. Just on the detail, one detail I think it would be really interesting to keep an eye on is the extent to which decisions can be reviewed, because when that tool has been used previously, reviews haven't been possible, or have only been possible in exceptional circumstances. And I think the Minister was asked about this week about that, and said he had an open mind, he'd consult. But in his speech, he also said that review was one of the reasons it had been really hard to rein in the costs. And I think because disabilities can vary so widely, and the tool is sort of is going to be trying to make uniform decisions, I think that review question is going to be important.
Yeah.
So just going back to your question about political pain, I mean, issues to do with the NDIS is already one of the biggest volumes of calls to electorate officers. I think as we see over the next 18 months, or, you know, especially part of the initial immediate financial control stuff that Mark Butler wants to get passed before the end of June will be a crackdown on unplanned reassessments, which he said results in an average 20% increase to a plan. And the other thing he said was that's often not... often the person themselves isn't asking for that. It's the sort of third-party plan manager that comes through.
And also a reduction in the use of community participation workers.
But I think that once those cuts come in, electorate officers, all the backbenchers, Labor backbenchers are going to be flooded by people saying my plan's being cut.
Just quickly on this too, there was, as you say, a lot of announcements from Mark Butler alongside the NDIS changes, and one was winding back the more generous private health insurance rebate for people over 65. The money that's going to raise will go into more aged care supports. But Lenore, it's fascinating. These baby boomers we're talking about, for a long time they've been untouchable politically.
Now no longer the biggest part of the electorate, no longer untouchable. And that anger among under 45s or younger Australians locked out of the housing market who think the boomers are rolling in clover. I think the government sees this as reforms that they can get through. And that one, I doubt it'll make much difference to the uptake of private health insurance because, let's face it, older people need private health insurance.
Yeah, and it's not all bets are off. I mean, I think when we see capital gains and negative gearing, there will be grandfathering of some sort. I don't think the risk is entirely disappeared.
Just on what Angus Taylor, I thought that was interesting on the property investment taxes, negative gearing, capital gains tax. Not willing to say that we're going to defend these to the end. We're going to vote against whatever the government puts up. He's keeping the door ajar.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the unanswered question in his mind will be exactly how far Labor will go to protect new homes from their changes, because there's a world, for instance, where they could even propose more generous tax treatment for new homes if they wanted to. Not sure that that's necessarily where they're going to go, but I think also there's a view within the Liberal Party room that even if you have a bit of a whinge about it at the time and vote against it in the Parliament, why would you want to be talking about this?
Definitely some Liberals who acknowledge that they've got to do more to attract young voters, and housing is the issue. And I think Jim Chalmers will probably, will look at the response to his government and to his budget in a month's time, and maybe he'll be saying, "Okay, boomer."
Too, right? Andrew Hastie, Andrew Bragg, Tim Wilson. They're
Keith Wellahan
It's an interesting generational difference on this. And speaking of generational difference, more than 15 years ago, the Rudd Labor government proposed a new tax on Australian resources, and it was met with howls of protest at the time. How things have changed. Now we have the Albanese government under pressure from a new generation demanding it impose a tax on the exports of Australian gas.
Gas companies make extraordinary profits. So now is the time.
A 25% tax will be the end of the industry, and that's what these people want.
Hey Australia, how much money did you make? Like $2 billion.
We understand that we're giving most of it away for free.
Shell Australia has invested more than $60 billion of private capital into Australian gas and LNG projects.
How is it that we are holding all of the cards, yet still losing?
It's time for Australians at large to benefit from the resources which they own.
Tax the tax!
We are absolutely 100% committed to repealing the mining tax.
Tax the tax!
A 7.5% on average reduction in investment returns would render growth projects uneconomic, uninvestable.
Those resources are the property of the people of Australia.
When that happens, tax receipts fall, jobs get lost.
No more free gas, and you need to start paying tax. No thanks.
The government could be raising $17 billion every year.
We've got the gas industry, vested interests with a stranglehold on the major parties.
David Pocock does not support gas production.
Stop the crap in the national interest, just do it.
If we have a contract, we stick to our word.
No matter how tough we punters have it, no matter how high the cost of living goes, we still pay our tax. And we don't get our gas for free.
Axe the tax and bugger off!
Back then, axe the tax. Today, it's tax the gas. How things have changed. But look, the government's not going to do anything on this front, my understanding is, in the budget coming up. For a few reasons. You heard it there from the PM. They're worried about the reaction from customers in the region, Japan, Singapore and so on. It also doesn't think the gas companies are actually making a windfall right now. And a third reason too is they are a little worried about any new tax on gas being conflated with the higher fuel prices people are paying. They reckon the opposition would just come after them, link the two and say, oh, they're taxing your gas. And people would be confused about that. So anyway, it doesn't necessarily mean this is off the agenda forever.
No. I'm definitely picking up from Labor backbenchers. You know, they don't think that this is... It's a no, not now, but not ever.
They have a Labor conference coming up in
And there'll be a
July,
big
and the
fight.
rank and file will go after this, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if there's nothing in the budget, then I think there's a sort of a groundswell of, you know, motions at branch level and things like that all is part of the work that feeds into the conference.
Yeah.
And the other thing, some research that WA Labor's been doing, you know, they're doing focus groups and stuff all the time.
Fighting against this.
Well, they've actually been picking up that men in their 40s in Perth's outer suburbs are bringing up this idea about a gas tax, and they're in favour of it.
Right.
This is a group of people who you would ordinarily think, you know, Perth, very resources literate state, obviously, group of people that you would ordinarily think would be dead against it, but they're saying, well, you know, these multinationals, like, they're making a motza.
It's on the
they should be
left
paying.
and the right as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how the sentiment has changed, and in the court of public opinion, that sovereign risk argument that the fossil fuel companies have been making since they knocked off the resource super profits tax, you know, thanks for reminding us of Gina on the back of the flatbed truck, is not cutting it anymore. And this coalition of sort of elder statesmen like Ken Henry and Rod Sims and Ross Garnaut and Punters Politics and Greens and Pocock using social media so effectively have really got through to people.
Tom, explain this for us, because I think there is a lot of confusion out there. Do these guys, these gas companies, pay much tax at the moment or not?
Well, let me take the 12 minutes remaining in the show, David, to give you half an answer to that very complicated question. Look, I mean, I think that there's, through both the PRRT and the company tax
The PRRT,
system,
just to explain, is the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, which is on the actual resource.
Offshore. It's on offshore gas. Only, not
and
onshore.
through, in some instances, state royalties. There's sort of a patchwork of taxes that add up to something, not nothing. I think that where the debate kind of gets into the technical space, and the one constancy in that package was a grouchy Ken Henry talking about how you can do this, is that when you're talking about gas and a natural resource that a company has exclusive rights to, they earn what economists call rents. And if you can design a tax in a way that identifies the rent portion, which is essentially a profit above and beyond the kind of profitability exercise that a company decides about whether to take the gas out of the ground or not, that you can actually tax that at a very high rate, as other countries like Norway do, and not worry so much about constraining production. And that's where Ken Henry has said, and his review 15 years ago had 3 different ideas for how you could do this. There are different ways that you can design a tax in that way. It's a slightly different question when you're looking at a company that's deciding whether or not to set up a new gas operation, because then if you're looking at a very generous versus a slightly less generous tax system, then maybe that does make a difference on the margin to that company. But I think that there is a way that you could design this tax that's been around for a very long time. But I think those arguments that you raised there at the beginning are the compelling ones for Labor at the moment. But I agree with Katina that it's a not yet.
Watch this space, not this budget, but watch this space. Look, of course, the backdrop to the great difficulty with this budget is this ongoing war. Now, where are we at? As of this morning, Donald Trump has now called off his 2 advisors, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. They were going to go to Pakistan for another round of peace talks. That's now not happening. The ceasefire, though, Lenore, is still technically in place. So are we in a stalemate?
It would appear so. I mean, I think Donald Trump said if they want to talk, they can call me. And I also saw him say to a reporter who asked him, didn't you say this would be done in 4 to 6 weeks, that he was taking a little break. So it's unclear. I think the US
he's got his pool guys putting out the, he's busy. He's got other things on.
I think the US is sort of very much playing up divisions in the Iranian regime. I don't know to what extent that is real and to what extent that is being hyped by the US, but it doesn't seem to be concluding anytime quickly.
Which is a nightmare scenario for putting this budget together. There was
time.
Still some hope this would be wrapped up by budget time. But
And the longer the war goes on, the greater the risk to both Australia's economic output and inflation, those two things pulling in opposite directions and making the job really hard. Although, having said that, I mean, I think it's now looking like by budget night we're still going to be in this position where the fuel stocks won't be being eaten into within the next 2 weeks. and there'll still be that uncertainty in the forecast. So it'll be one of those budgets where you've really got to look at the best case, the worst case, and understand the nuance and the range that will sit around an extremely uncertain set of forecasts.
The government keeps saying it is going to do something more in the budget on this whole fuel security issue. It's a little unclear what, but I assume increasing that minimum stock obligation.
On the storage side, probably, and you sort of need some physical space to actually store the fuel, as I understand it.
Which isn't cheap.
Which isn't cheap. I mean, Chris Bowen's saying to get up to the 90 days, that's the sort of international standard, it'd be 20 billion over 4 years, which is almost the entirety of the savings from the NDIS over the next 4 years.
And the other thing is that 3 months comes by very quickly, so the decision about whether the fuel excise discount and all those other bits of stimulus are going to be extended, that'll need to be made pretty soon as well.
Yeah, I mean, Angus Taylor, coming back to him, the argument is drill for oil. Get more drilling
It's
going.
not a quick fix, though.
It's definitely
it's not going to help.
And it also
right
doesn't
now.
do much, even if it happened quickly, which it can't. The price is set by the international price. I mean, the US is almost self-sufficient and their gas prices are still through the roof. So it doesn't seem to be
unless you had some
starting.
sort of, you can only drill and use it in Australia, you can't export it. That changes the economics of drilling in the first place. But is this resonating, do you think, in the electorate? This idea that, well, we've got this great crisis, we're so exposed to imports, why don't we drill for more oil? Does that have simple resonance?
It probably does, in much the same way I think that the gas tax thing does. I think it's funny how, I mean, we shouldn't necessarily assume that there's a clean line on all these things. Like, I think somehow actually the fact that the PM's going through Asia asking for more fuel supplies is somehow making people more willing to have a gas tax and contemplate that as well. I think people just have this broad fusion in their mind of we've got all these natural resources, we seem to be in a tough spot all the time when it comes to fuel, gas, whatever, and that we should be able to kind of, take back control is the way that it would be expressed on the right. Like there is that sort of broad appetite that some sort of radical rebalancing is needed on that.
We'll see what comes in the budget just over 2 weeks from now. Our panel, Katina Curtis, Tom Crowley and Lenore Taylor, back shortly with some final observations. Time now for Mike Bowers and Talking Pictures.
I'm Mike Bowers and I'm photographer at large for the New Daily. I'm talking pictures this morning with ABC radio host and comedian, the one and only Michael Hing, and a very warm welcome back. I think it's been a few years.
It has been a while.
You've been on the project for quite a number of years, but are no more.
Well, hang on, I just need to make clear, I left the project before it was cancelled, okay? So that's important to know. Yes, but also now I'm the host of Double J Mornings, and I'm on a huge comedy tour. It's called The Real Human Man, but I'm glad to be back talking cartoons with you, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a huge week, and Mark Butler's announcement this week really put the diss in NDIS. And Mark Knight has the inventor tinkering with the NDIS wheelchair here, and he seems to have gone astray. Down in the Labor workshop, Minister Butler was working on a redesign of the NDIS.
Yeah, and my concern with this is that I don't think this wheelchair is up to code.
No.
I feel like ejector seat is probably not standard wheelchair practice.
It certainly looks like the occupant here has been quite shocked by the whole thing. Harry Bruce from the Townsville Bulletin has got, well, I'm afraid in future you'll have to jump through a few more hoops.
Who traditionally jumps through the hoops? Is it the lion that jumps through the hoop at the circus?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I guess in this thing, it's sort of like, maybe it's actually talking about the bravery of this person who's about to be kicked off the NDIS.
I suppose so, yeah. Lovely Matt Golding cartoon. He's got the NDIS as the escaping noise as it deflates.
And that balloon that they've inflated is the size of a blimp.
Yeah.
So we've got to look into this person's lung capacity. It's huge.
It's huge. They don't need to be on the NDIS.
That should be an Olympian.
Well, the Prime Minister has ruled out a tax on gas exports, but the gas companies have had a pretty easy run. Kathy Wilcox says invisible things. Yesterday upon the stair I saw a tax that wasn't there. Australian gas extracted and exported by large multinational companies. Nothing.
The benefit to Australia from the export of our gas?
Nothing. Zilt. Zero. Zip. Nada.
I mean, obviously very artistically striking. Kathy's one of the greats. You've got to respect our cartoonist who's handing in largely blank squares to the editor.
Right? I have an idea. Michael, the war with Iran may seem irrational, but both sides seem to be playing it straight, or bent, as it goes, with the stop, go, stop war. Warren Brown's cartoon, lovely depiction of what's going on there. Wait, okay, go, stop.
Go, stop, go!
No, wait, stop.
Good to know that, You know, everyone is annoyed by traffic jams and traffic on the high seas. But I feel like the people on the ships aren't the ones who are causing the confusion, you know? It's the leaders who have found themselves in this intractable war that they can't remove themselves from.
No, it's got real sort of "no, you are" vibes, isn't it? like a kid's fight in the backyard. David Rowe, in his beautiful way, Treasurer's Log Day 52. Dear Budget, apologies for my shaky handwriting. The seas are somewhat volatile and the commander is batshit crazy. It's channeling Nelson's first letter when he lost his right arm and had to write with his left.
David Rowe's grotesque way he depicts people is so incredible. I mean, kind of this half-nude Trump.
And Pete Hegseth here, who seems to be chug-a-lugging.
And a landmine of unemployment.
Yeah, beautiful. Michael, it's been a great pleasure unpicking events this week. Good luck with the tour, and I'll let you do the honours.
Back to you, Speersy.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Mike. Let's get some final observations. Katina.
The PM is headed to Perth this week. He'll be giving a speech at a hastily arranged resources industry event on Wednesday morning. It's the time, you know, we're 2 weeks out from the budget. It's the time when they sort of go around having quiet words to people about, you know, what may or may not be going to be in there. Jim Chalmers was in town last week for a sort of low-key visit where he also had breakfast with some resources types. Now, the theme of the PM's speech, as I'm told, is fuel security and the role of the resources sector in keeping the nation operating. So I think there'll be some pointers there about what might be coming in the budget.
Doesn't sound like gas and why we need to tax it more is the,
it does not.
Is the headline of that speech. That's very interesting. So a reassuring message to the industry out west. Tom.
With all the pre-budget speculation, I'm getting very sick of the words could and might, and I'm looking forward to not having to use them when we actually see the budget, but some more scuttlebutt in the meantime. I think on capital gains and negative gearing, the one thing that I'm picking up is that wouldn't necessarily expect that it will raise a lot of money, in particular if a cautious approach is taken to grandfathering. And so this debate about a tax grab and whether there'll be income tax cuts, I didn't ever really think that Labor was going to want to telegraph income tax cuts for the next election so far out, but I think that that will also just add to the picture that it may not look like that much of a revenue-raising measure. And on the spending side, when Jim Chalmers says the NDIS is the biggest save, I think that is by a long shot, and this 5% public service efficiency drive of last year, there may be some cuts that come from that list, but emphasising in the last week or so when I'm speaking to people in government that that is not anything like 5% that's going to come out on budget night. So broader cuts, not something that I'm hearing at the moment.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm told they still haven't finally finalised the housing tax changes.
That's right.
But clearly
should have used a could or a might there.
Yeah, no. But the fact that they're using intergenerational equity in their phrasing every day tells you something is coming on this. Lenore.
I said earlier, I really think that we need to be scrutinising One Nation's policies more, specifically in the Farrer by-election. I don't think the One Nation candidate, David Farley, has really been pinned down on what One Nation's immigration policy, such that it is, would mean for migrant labour in that electorate. The Riverine is really dependent on migrant labour for working on farms and fruit picking. There's several special programs to get workers into that electorate, and I think he's sort of skated around it, but I think it would be really interesting to pin him down on, you know, the policy that they have and how that would impact the electorate.
I think it's a good point. The comments that I have seen from David Farley have been far more nuanced than we hear from Pauline Hanson about the need for migration in a seat like Farrer to keep the industry there going. So no, that's a good point. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning. Finally, finding the perfect metaphor to describe Australia's role in a rapidly changing world can be tricky. But the PM made it, and perhaps us, look easy. We'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching.
That doesn't mean that it's an exclusive relationship. This isn't a monogamous relationship between Australia and the United States. Australia is also, if you like, we're out there dating in our region.
You're making us all feel very excited about being here.